the first to know Nsem-Pii TV.
Reverend Ntim, leader of the Defense Committee of Parliament. For Emet flight, a whole allegation, drugs, and who did there. NDC for a year, abroad, Ntim Fodjo, the two just said flight CB ABC Kotoka International Airport. I carry cocaine and a home cornebano. And there was a Kasabium, another revelation. Our dear ban is a Hopeson, Yawovi Adorye. Ono nso akɔtena radio station so aka sɛ on the 18th of January, Flagstaff House, kyerɛ sɛ baabi a John Dramani Mahama, President John Dramani Mahama, ɔnante fa no, ɔteɛ no, ɛhɔ ɔhu sɛ ɛyɛ flights aba offload cocaine and then drugs. Now V8 ɛkɔ akɔneaba ɛtwe drugs ne cocaine ne kɔ. And to ɔkɔlɛ on national security sɛ ɔno a ɔwɔ defense ministry no so no ɛbɛkaeɛ ɛna ɔmo ready ne home sɛ ɔmo pɛ no akye no deɛ ɛneɛ Hopeson Adorye nso ɛyɛ sɛ ɔmo kye no ɔmo nkɔ na ɔmo nkɔkye no because ɔno nso yɛ wild allegations even more than deɛ ɔno Ntim Fodjo ɛkaeɛ no yɛnkɔ na yɛnkɔ tie nsɛm a ɔde to dwa.
Plane suspicious flights now. One day, new maybe me kokan say one more any investigation. One day a tube at the big ram field. Sabri, Hopeson Adorye at the Arabic to gas 18th January. Or no as one one general abuse for to you or say there be a president Nankasa, there be a president Mahama Efan. And now one day a new maybe be far who be on your gun and ne private jet be see edi twemukọ video no eda bonten se ne oboa dia na meboa ba se the okan video ni mu no kore se 18 January so plane bi be see and womode friend say ka bi edi atrantwi elodu nuoma bi de kode ba wo presidential gate dia nas wo call for investigation ono so omde tio be konifia na eno ne asema ye bisa. The same thing, similar one, be no so one or the atuga. Maintain say a tube any tax. Aquacubu run fee. And not a slam penning. A yard Dawson. A yard Dawson. And no Monteso, would a moon to me, I empower the Monteso. A yard Dawson 2 months. To say that Osha opios, said the tramadol, said the trafadol, said the red, and say a mebuni F woman no na sɛ woyɛ baatan na woyɛ mu nhyehyɛw na sɛ saa no bɔne nso sa mɛto nhyɛ so de a na yɛ mmeranteɛ no sɛbisɛbi a ɛmmoa bɛn na yɛde aboa wɔn saa no bɔne no nso sɛbi ɔman bia ni hɔ a ɛnya so mfasoɔ sɛe man ebu man no daakye gu ɔman no anim ase ɛma ɔman no nya din bɔne yɛsrɛ Ghana din pa a yɛ nananom Kwame Nkrumah nom JB Dankwa nom Pa Grant nom ade wo nkwa to hwa ma abedu me no yempenso no yenye de betumi na yemadudu nuboni dwadie no yentu ase na enkoye a thing of the day me kan say wi a yemo bibia afisiapa Yesu Kristo ne wusori ho afofida ye di Easter yi yesre Yakopon ensura ne nadom ede ma obia ebra ye bona asennuamu ewo mamudua ne so no otia mu kan say tetelesta ya wie na bra o kan se wie no na yen kwagye na na wawie na eyi edie na wawie ya yaresa na wawie ene ye fa ahodie na wawie ye ene nimpa na wawie bibi bia ya akwambue bibi bia ya nkanko eye mpuntuo wawie sabre yesre Yakopon asomwie ede ma obi bia otie ye Ghana fa na nyina se e mo obi bia happy Easter ye fa asomwie entena edamaso.
The whole process has been skewed, handled, and perhaps manipulated by partisan political considerations. That is where, for me, the problem is. And in our political democratic dispensation, the only time that a sitting Chief Justice was attempted. There was a veiled attempt to remove a sitting Chief Justice, but it didn't work. That was Justice Fred Apalu. Otherwise, the Chief Justices who were removed from office, we all know the circumstances and situations under which they were removed. It was all military governments. Akukosa, and I think, was it Charles Bannerman or one of them? Two of them were removed by military dictators. So that, for me, is the aberration. But in a constitutional setting, if the processes are followed through, and there is a valid case for the removal of a Chief Justice, I mean, who can quarrel against it? But when the issues are so muddied and there's a persistent refrain by people who should know better, that is where the worry is. I have listened to an interview granted by the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Mustafa Gbande. Well, he has not come out to disassociate himself from that interview. So I take it that as of this morning, that is what his take is on the removal of the Chief Justice, per se. And the kind of language that he used, I mean, for me, for a Deputy General Secretary of a ruling party and a sitting government, it's troubling. You know, he goes on to make a definitive pronouncement that this Chief Justice will go. After that, it will be the Electoral Commissioner and other heads of independent institutions in the country. I mean, I think it is needless. It is so needless. And that apart from these petitions, these 3 petitions that we have been told of, there are a load of others coming. I mean, who actually has been feeding him with this information? And how did he get to know that other persons were bringing petitions for the removal? Why? Is it stage managed? And for me, a Deputy General Secretary of the NDC should not be talking this way, because it fuels the atmosphere and it gives other people the opportunity to also make statements which otherwise they would not have made.
He spoke yesterday.
Yeah, was it yesterday? Yes. And now, with the greatest respect, I say this with a lot of pain, but the national chairman of NDC, Ibn Ketia, was also on radio. And, you know, statements like we need to reset the country and we should start with the judiciary and then we go to the Electoral Commission. And what is that supposed to mean? Because if the national chairman of the NDC is also in active cahoots, in active support of this refrain, what is being reset? Or what is being reset? Look, it is just an incident of political history that I guess in the last 5 Chief Justices that we have had, Justice George Kingsley Akwa, Georgina Wood, Sophia Akufu, but I guess if I say Justice George Kingsley Akwa and I say it comes to please. I don't think we are here for that. We are the Chief Justices we have had. Chief Justice Kingsley Akwa, Mrs. Georgina Wood, Madam Sophia Akufu, Enin Yeboah, and Mrs. Gertrude Toko. Well, by incidents of political history, I mean, all these justices were justices who were appointed by the NPP government. But it's not something that anyone could have anticipated. But that is what happened. And can we say that these justices of the Supreme Court and Chief Justices have not distinguished themselves creditably You see, when decisions are handed in court, we look at the basis of the decisions and make a critique of the decisions. But if, because a Chief Justice has been appointed by a ruling government and decisions are handed, then it means that that Chief Justice is politically inclined. I found no merit in that reasoning. And what is the basis, some of the basis, the things that people have said loudly about why this present CJ should be removed, that they refer to the unanimous decisions in the 2020 presidential election petition. But come on, she wasn't even the Chief Justice at the time. The Chief Justice was Enini Yeboah. She was only a panel member of the constituted bench of the Supreme Court, which heads the petition. So how can you hang that on her and say that because of that she should be removed and that the judiciary should be sanitized? In what way or manner? In any event, we are all students of the law. Some say you're a trained lawyer. I'm a trained lawyer. Inusa is a trained lawyer. Gloria is a trained lawyer. Bobby is a trained lawyer. Fortunately, all of us here are lawyers. Now, maybe people will say I'm speaking from a point of prejudice, but I always speak my mind as a trained lawyer. As I'm saying, it is not for glorification, but you know my stance on certain discussions we have had, both on radio and privately. And I don't mince words when I know what is happening. Does not sit with me. But
that's right.
But please, let's be cautious. Because if we take a systemic and determined attempt to destroy our institutions of state, it is the country that will suffer. We have the executive, we have the judiciary, we have the legislature. Let us maintain this separate, distinct arms of government and let them all do their work independently. Now, a typical case of this 2020 for any defendant to open his or her defense in a case.
We have gone beyond it. I don't know why sometimes, I'm tempted, sometimes why the politicians, even those who are lawyers, they turn the law upside down.
Is it...
It's not mandatory.
Is it mandatory for a defendant in a case, both civil and criminal, is it even mandatory, even with a criminal trial, where you suffer the penalty of imprisonment, a fine, or sometimes you are hanged or you are jailed for life? It is not mandatory that the accused person should open his defense or her defense. It is the burden of the prosecution to prove the guilt of the accused person beyond all reasonable doubts. In a civil trial, it is the burden of the plaintiff to prove beyond the preponderance of probabilities that you have made out a case. If the defendant elects that, look, I'm not going to say anything, I'm going to rely on my statement of defense. What can be so nauseating? What can be so bad about it?
In fact, in a civil matter, that statement of defense will be struck off. And then and
that is used as a weapon. And sometimes this is found by lawyers. Come on. Now...
There was a suggestion that this was some sort of sui generis of a matter that the EC at least should get in the box.
Oh, Samson. There is no bar to civil responsibilities in a civil trial, no matter how sui generis the matter is. You cannot change civil procedure. You cannot change the rules and orders of court. If it is A, it is A. We don't skew because it's sui generis. In any event, something. Aside of the CJ, we also had indication that the petition had been forwarded for the removal of Justice Scott Porman by another citizen of the Republic. Just a day or two ago, I heard that petition has been withdrawn. What does it make of it? Quietly, that matter has been determined. If the petition is withdrawn, it's gone. But did we hear the cacophony of noises which have been made in respect of Georgina Wood? She's been given the petition. She submitted a response. and we are waiting for what would happen. I beg and plead with all Ghanaians, and the political actors especially, that we should refrain from making judgmental and prejudicial comments. It does not help the narrative. It does not help the discussion. Now, before I leave this space, Samson, why is it that sometimes we pick and choose? When it is good for us, then all is well. And when it's not good for us, then it is inevitably bad. We were all in this country. There was a very high-profile criminal trial involving Hopeson and Richard Japa about causing financial loss to the state. The lawyers for the two accused persons, of course, the third one was discharged on medical grounds, lodged an appeal in the Court of Appeal. There was a 2-1 verdict in the Court of Appeal, and Hopeson and Richard Japa were acquitted and discharged. What does that make of our judiciary? And what does that make of the Court of Appeal? That the two justices, Justice Bright Mensah J.A. and Akabuafo, who were in the majority in that decision, are pliant NDC judges. I mean, you see, when we do some of these things, it becomes laughable. So it means Akabuafo and Justice Bright Mensah are NDC judge acolytes. So they decided that they will acquit and discharge Hopeson and Japa. But these are justices who are appointed by sitting presidents. Akabuafo was appointed by President Akufo-Addo. Bright Mensah was appointed during the tenure of the MPP government. So the other justice, Opokwa Champon, was also appointed in the NDC, in the MPP regime. So then what makes of the other two justices?
He moved from Judicial Secretary to
Judicial Secretary to the Court of Appeal. Okay. So what makes of them? The two of them are okay. NDC judge acolytes.
So catch your breath.
Come on.
And then